Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert. And it's interesting, when I first got this in the mail, I don't know if you could see how thin it is. Having read Dune, for those of you who read Dune, this is what I was waiting for in the mail. I thought, all right, I'm digging in. I'm going to continue on in this series. I'm compelled enough. Well, it turns out this little guy comes along. Now, I've heard this described as the falling action to Dune, the original, and I agree with that assessment. It happens 12 years after the events of the first book, but it still feels very much a piece of that book and a piece of the journey of the characters from that first book. So, what to say about this? Well, it's less than half the size of the original Dune. But this is an important part of the story that I think sets up the next part of the story. In a sense, it's not part of a trilogy because I think there's 6 or 7 books in this series. So, but as is the case with middle books, it's wrapping up things from before and setting things up for what's to come. The main thrust of this book for me is the question of foreknowledge. So due to his genetic makeup and his consumption of spice, Paul Atreides, who's I can't call him the protagonist because he's not a protagonist, but I'll leave a link to my original Dune review below, because if you haven't read Dune, this may not be as coherent to you, but if you watch my original Dune review, you'll at least have context for this. That Paul has special powers of prescience. He's able to see the future. Now, what's interesting about this is we would think this is a great gift, but the problem is knowing what the future holds doesn't help you prevent it from happening. And in fact, as Paul goes deeper into the various possibilities, so let's say A happens, or B happens, or C happens, all of those futures tend to crowd together in a way that makes it difficult to see a path, which obviously there's some analogy there to the desert and how the sand and the wind sweep away paths and things look trackless after a while. But here, that question resonates with us potentially as humans. Of course, we always have that question of free will and predestination. Say, if God knows what is going to happen, is there really any free will going on? And here, I think that question is dealt with admirably. The fact that Paul is able to see the future doesn't prevent him from changing the future. It only allows him to know what his reactions are going to be at any given time. So from the beginning of this book to the end, that problem, that message is at the forefront, and I don't think the reader really knows how it will resolve until close to the end, because we're not given enough information to figure it out. Although more thoughtful readers may have figured it out. I've always said that I'm the last person you want to have on your side at a murder mystery dinner, that I seem to be the last person to say, oh, the butler did it in the kitchen. So that's the main action of the book. What I was surprised about is the lack of presence of Chani, our character that was, I would say, promised to us in the last book. I think I thought we would see this relationship develop more, and we're simply told of the connection of Paul and Chani, but we don't have too much time with her to have that figured out. In fact, we have a lot more time with Irulan, who we know is the historian one of the historians for this series, and a key part of the plot that the book starts us off with. Obviously, there's a plot to overthrow Paul and to deal with him, and it's brought together a number of enemies: the Spacing Guild, the Bene Gesserit, with Gaius Helen Mohiam, and Irulan, of course, and a new race who was not was not really highlighted for us in the first Dune book, which is the Bene Tleilax. It's Tleilax. So the Bene Tleilax are, you could say, a complement to the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit, who are, let's say, doing things very old school, no machines. The Bene Tleilax, they make things like mechanical replacement eyes, or they essentially bring back people from the dead. And we have the storyline repeat from the first Dune, in which the question is, when is a gift not a gift? So the Bene Tleilax make, and this is a spoiler alert, although it's not enough of a spoiler to ruin the reading experience, because you're not going to figure out what's going to happen with this character, but the corpse of Duncan Idaho was almost immediately taken by the Bene Tleilax, and they made what is called a Ghola, Ghola, but effectively a type of clone, and they offer it to Paul as a gift, with the idea that if Paul likes this idea, then they can give him other gifts later on, and that I won't spoil for you. When is a gift not a gift? And like his father ahead of him, Paul accepts the gift, knowing that it's going to be a weapon to be used against him, and tries to do his best to prepare himself and his people for this gift of sorts. So, yes, we don't see Chani. We also don't see Lady Jessica, and it's implied the challenge of her being, she won't even be on the same planet as her two children. So she's somewhere else back at Caladan, and her two children are here on Dune. So obviously there's a big open question. Why is a mom not with her children? And at least one of the characters implies that she fears them in a certain sense, which is not the most unreasonable thing. But that means that with Lady Jessica not in the foreground, the other woman in Paul's life, given that Irulan is plotting against him and Chani's been pushed to the sidelines in this text, is his sister Aaliyah. Saint Aaliyah of the Knife, Aaliyah the Abomination, but this young woman who became aware in the womb as her mother took this potion that made her a Reverend Mother. And she's an interesting character because she's at once childlike, but she has all of these memories, collective memories of her Reverend Mother, and she's asked to be a leader in a religious ritual. And that perhaps is the backdrop for the other part of the story, apart from divine foreknowledge. What happens when religion is used as a tool, as a mechanism, and when the deities of the religion don't even believe in themselves? They question their own motives. They are skeptical or even scornful of the role that religion plays in the lives of their followers. So there's still plenty of ideas here, but I want to be clear. It's not fair to compare the two books to say, okay, well, one is better than the other. Dune set up this universe for us, and the universe is broad and enormous with many different avenues you can go down. So this sets up our universe. It does a great job of setting up the universe. This takes us down one aspect of some of the paths in this universe, and frankly sets us up for a bigger story. If this is the falling action of Dune, as I say, 12 years after the events of the original book, and the book ends in such a way that we're looking towards new characters that we either haven't met yet, so I'm trying not to spoil it, characters we really haven't met yet, or characters like Aaliyah who will appear in the next book, at least that's how it appears here, and is setting us up for a greater story. So things to reflect on: great storytelling by Frank Herbert as usual, and a broader filling out of the universe, not at the same speed and not at the same depth as the original Dune book, but that's good. I think if you had another Dune-sized book after the first one, it might have discouraged people from continuing on, or not. In either case, this was the right size for me, just under 300 pages. And this is a really nice series now, I think, which they put together for the re-release of the Denis Villeneuve editions, that they've brought out these new editions of the text. So, as usual, it's the part of the video where I ask you to like, subscribe. If you'd like to support reviews like this, you can click on my Patreon link below. As I said, I'll already give a link to the original Dune review that I did. But until next time, which will not necessarily be a Dune review, but you should expect a Dune review in the future. Until next time, enjoy your reading.